Welcome to the Marketing Execution Podcast. This is the show for tech founders and leaders building B2B products and technologies. We show you how to go further, faster to get the business results you need.
From strategies to big exec dreams, catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Ever feel like you're drowning in information? Like you're trying to drink from a fire hose? We're tackling that today, head on, with Ogilvy on advertising.
Now, don't check out quite yet. Even if you're not in marketing, this book, it's packed with wisdom that goes way beyond, just selling stuff.
Totally. David Ogilvy, he's like the godfather of advertising. And what's amazing is how relevant his ideas still are. Even though the book, it's from back in 1985. So we're digging into those golden nuggets, seeing how they apply now in our world.
Yeah, it really makes you think how much marketing has changed and yet how much is still the same, at its core.
Right. And the first thing that really struck me, Ogilvy, he doesn't even put advertising first, not as the most important thing. For him, it's all about the product itself.
Totally. He's like obsessed with quality. He says that's the foundation.
Yeah.
Sounds obvious, right? But it's so easy to get lost in the marketing hype and forget that you need a solid product to begin with.
It's like, what's that saying? Putting lipstick on a pig.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting, Ogilvy. He actually says that sometimes a higher price can actually help you. That people, they equate price with quality.
Yeah. Whoa, really? Tell me more about that.
Okay, so he gives this example about the French government selling cheese. They're selling the exact same cheese, but at different prices. And guess what? The more expensive cheese flew off the shelves.
See, that's so interesting to me because it shows you, like, we're almost programmed to think, pricier, it must be better.
Right. It's human psychology. And we see it everywhere today with those, premium brands, luxury goods. It's all about that perceived value. Ogilvy was onto something.
It's like when I was buying headphones.
Yeah.
And there were two that were pretty much the same, but I went with the pricier pair. Like, in my head, I had to justify it. So I convinced myself they were better.
That's exactly it. But it's not just about, slapping a big price tag on something. Ogilvy also talks about this balance between novelty and being conventional, especially for new products. You don't want to be boring, but going too far out there can scare people off.
Right. He uses that example of the first cold cereals. Imagine trying to convince people used to like oatmeal and eggs to suddenly switch to cold milk with crunchy flakes.
Yeah. It'd be tough to market that. But it shows you got to meet people where they are, give them something new, but make it familiar enough that they'll actually try it.
It makes me wonder, today everyone's obsessed with being disruptive. But are we forgetting that balance? Are we sacrificing familiarity just to be different?
It's a good question. But, as much as Ogilvy stresses the product itself, he also believed in the power of a great advertisement.
He said a good ad could outsell a bad one by 20 times. Crazy, right?
Yeah. And he had this whole thing about Listerine. It'd been around forever, but sales exploded when they started advertising it as a solution for bad breath.
It's amazing what a different message can do. Do you think results like that are still possible today, though? I mean, everything's so fragmented now.
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's not like it was back then.
Back then you had, a few big TV networks and magazines. Now everyone's got their own little world of content. But Ogilvy, he was all about finding those big ideas, the ones that cut through all that noise.
Absolutely. Not just a catchy slogan. He wanted those big core concepts, truths that could last for years, decades even.
He had that list of questions, right, for identifying a big idea. Does it make you gasp when you hear it? Or would it make other advertisers jealous? He was serious.
And those questions, they're still so relevant. It makes you think, in this world of fleeting trends and data, are we losing sight of those big, powerful themes? Are we so busy looking at the little details that we miss the big picture?
It's so true. It's like that campaign a few years back for, what was it? I can't even remember the brand now, but the whole thing was about...
Yeah, it was all about connecting with nature, visually stunning, those big sweeping landscapes. And the tagline was, what was it? It'll come back to me.
I know what you mean. Anyway, it's interesting because Ogilvy, he was surprisingly bullish on print, even though, nowadays everyone says print is dead, but he had some data back then.
Yeah, back then it was actually super cost effective, less competition too. So if you had a strong message, it really stood out. And for Ogilvy, it all came down to the headline.
He was obsessed with headlines. He said that's your first impression, and sometimes It's the only handily impression you get.
Which is interesting, right? Because even now, in the digital world, headlines are huge EE. They're what grab you, whether it's an article or a social media post or whatever.
It's true. You scroll right past if the headline doesn't grab you. Ogilvy had some good advice about that too. Some of it kind of surprising. Like, he was a big fan of using quotes.
Yeah.
He gave this example, a headline for a piano school. It said, "They laughed when I sat down at the piano, but when I started to play."
Ooh. I kind of want to know what happens next. That's good.
Right. It makes you curious. And that makes me think about all those like clickbait headlines you see everywhere online. Maybe they're not so different from what Ogilvy was doing, just, updated for the internet age.
Yeah, plus saw change, right? The more things change, the more they stay the same. But what's really interesting, given how much Ogilvy hated distractions, is his advice on TV. He had a background in theater, so he really knew how to use visuals.
Yeah, but he wasn't about spending a ton of money on fancy commercials. He thought simple could be just as effective, maybe even more effective.
And some of his favorite types of commercials, they're still huge today, like humor. Everyone loves a funny commercial.
Totally. A good laugh can make you remember a brand.
Exactly. And then there's demonstrations, actually showing how the product works.
It's funny because that's like the OG user-generated content in a way, right? Seeing someone actually use the thing, like those infomercials.
Oh, I know. They're so cheesy, but you can't stop watching.
It's true. You should change the channel, but you just can't look away.
Exactly. But here's where Ogilvy gets really interesting. He was totally against using celebrities, thought it was distracting, and ultimately bad for the brand.
Really? I see his point, but isn't that kind of like what influencer marketing is? Just with a different name?
Right. Are we making the same mistakes? Focusing so much on the famous person that we forget about the product itself. It makes you wonder. And speaking of things that have stuck around, radio. Ogilvy, he didn't have as much data on radio back then, but he still had some sharp insights, like using a conversational tone and repeating the core message.
Which, when you think about it, is perfect for today's podcasts and audiobooks, right? It's like his radio advice was made for this moment. It's kind of wild when you think about it, right? Some things, they just don't change. Even with all the technology, those basic principles still work.
It's true. Ogilvy, he was all about connecting with people on a human level. And that never goes out of style, no matter how many gadgets we have.
Exactly. So, big picture time. What can we actually take away from Ogilvy on advertising today?
Well, I think the big one, for me at least, is the importance of those timeless principles. I mean, yeah, the internet changed everything, but good marketing, good advertising, it all comes back to the same core ideas.
Like focusing on the product itself.
Right.
Doesn't matter how slick your ads are if you're selling like junk.
Exactly. And that whole big idea thing, that really stuck with it. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else is doing, but finding that one true thing about your brand, that's what makes it last.
Oh, and don't forget being clear. Ogilvy, he hated anything that muddled the message. Keep it simple, make it compelling, which honestly, we need that now more than ever.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much information out there. You got to cut through the noise somehow.
For sure. So I guess the takeaway is even if it feels like we're drowning in new info all the time, it's worth going back to the classics. Ogilvy on advertising, it's full of wisdom that still applies today.
It reminds you that sometimes the best solutions, they're not the newest ones. They're the ones that have worked all along.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into Ogilvy on advertising. Hopefully you learned a thing or two, maybe had some of those aha moments.
And as you go about your day, think about this. In a world obsessed with data, are we killing creativity? Would Ogilvy even survive in today's world? Or would all the algorithms and metrics drive him crazy?
That is a great question. I kind of think Ogilvy, he would figure it out. He'd be all over the internet, but still sticking to his principles.
He was a master, that's for sure. And true masters, they adapt.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. And we'll be back soon with more explorations of, well, whatever fascinating thing we dig up next. Until then, happy learning.
The Marketing Execution Podcast is produced by Growth Stage Marketing. We are on a mission to see your company reach wild success using marketing pods.
Too big, accept dreams. Catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Thank you for listening and being a part of the marketing execution movement and community. To learn how growth stage marketing clients reach more buyers and drive business impact, go to growthstage.marketing. That's growthstage.marketing.